One of the first events I ever viewed in the sky was the transit of Venus on June 5th of 2012. Well, I was actually at a job orientation in this was in San Francisco, California, and my coworker and I were looking at the transit of Venus, and I really didn't know what to expect. It was my very first time pointing my camera into the sky. I remember I had a filter in front of the camera lens, and we all had a good time looking at it. And it made me realize, wow, I've never thought about looking at anything in the sky. And I never really paid attention to even the phases of the moon, to be honest. It was around that time that I started to have some awareness of just what phase of the moon we were at, and I started having some awareness of what time the moon would rise and set with relation to its phase. I never realized that different phases actually rise and set at different times of the day. It just never really crossed my mind. And I remember one time I was driving from my parents' home in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was driving back to Seattle. It was late afternoon and the moon was starting to rise. This was obviously a full moon. I remember, oh my god, I can't believe the moon is so big, because it was at the horizon. It's actually an illusion. The way to tell it's an illusion is to zoom in your camera at a certain zoom. So my camera actually goes up to 50x. Let's see if we can do this right here. And if you try that when the moon's at the horizon, and then again when it's right over the meridian, you can tell that it is actually an illusion. They are the same size in either direction. So it was an illusion, but what was really interesting is I got back to Seattle, and I went back to work, and not long after that, I look in the sky again. There's another full moon, and I can't believe a month has passed. I got so carried away. I was working at a startup company at the time. Just got so carried away that time just flew right by, and I realized that, oh my god, I have a better sense of time now that I'm looking up in the sky. I had a situation that really brought me back to stargazing again. I was dating a girl in Bellevue, Washington. I was living in Redmond, Washington at the time, just a couple miles away. And one night we got into a heated argument over something really silly. And I stormed out of her home, and I drove 100 miles away. I was so lost in thought that I didn't realize how far I was driving away. I just wanted to see a little scenery, and what should have been a half-hour drive just looking at a few things turned out to be more like 100 miles. And I ended up in Ellensburg, Washington. And I was quite taken aback at how dark the skies were. And I got to see Jupiter, Saturn, and a little bit of the Milky Way, and I can't remember the phase of the moon, but I was able to see all of them very clearly. I had planned to go there to shoot a YouTube video, I think just about relationships and breaking up and arguing and all that, because that was what I was involved in at the time. I realized you couldn't see my face, you couldn't really hear me very well because of it was outdoors, obviously. And instead, I took my camera and I pointed it up at Jupiter, and I once again zoomed all the way in. And obviously you need to set a timer on the camera, otherwise it will shake and it will blur. And I set it for a 10-second timer. And at the time, I didn't know how to turn off the setting for the beeping sound. It went doot 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 doot, boom. And when I looked at the camera, I couldn't believe my eyes, because, first of all, I didn't even realize that was Jupiter at the time. It wasn't until I went home and looked it up. But not only was there a planet, but there were 4 other planets around it. It was the moons of Jupiter. You couldn't see it while it was in the camera mode. It was only after it shot the picture that you could see it. The problem is that I've since turned off the beeping sound for 2 reasons. One, it does drain the battery if I'm staying overnight somewhere to shoot something, and 2, the noise kind of does shake the camera a little bit. Not very much, but it's enough to make a difference. And then I looked at another planet, and I surmised that was Saturn because of the rings. And then when I went home to look at charts, it really was. and the Milky Way. And I started to read more about it, and that's when I learned there were other events going on. And then a year later, I went to Salem, Oregon to view a solar eclipse. This was on August 21st of 2017, I believe. And I was telling a friend of mine who lives in Portland, Oregon, if he would like to join me. Portland is on my way to Salem. I could pick him up, and he said that he doesn't want to deal with traffic. I was planning to leave actually 2 nights before the eclipse, just because I had the day before that off anyway, and plus I didn't really want to miss it. If something were to happen during the trip, not only traffic, but I just wanted to be certain that I would see it. Didn't run into traffic on the way there, obviously, because it was 2 nights before, and I stayed in my car. I went to a few places, just in the local area, talking to people about it, seeing if I can find other people interested. And next day, what was really funny was that I had parked my car in a walking park. There's a walking trail, and then there's a parking lot right next to it, and there are a lot of people who were camped out over there, and I really didn't want to miss it, so I set all of the alarms that I had around the car. I had several devices, my computer, everything that had an alarm, I set it, and I kept waking up too early, and I woke up, it was 4 a.m., I went back to sleep, it was 5 a.m., and then 6 a.m., and then finally, the alarms didn't even go off. Everybody had woken up, and there was just a lot of noise. People were just shouting and celebrating and all that. And so I finally got up, and I was a little surprised about... I've seen solar eclipses, in the media, but I was not prepared for how exciting that would be. And we don't have another one for at least 7 years. I don't know if I'll go to Texas for the next one. That's a bit of a much bigger commute than what I had last time. And then 6 months after that, we had a lunar eclipse. And I looked online to see because I never viewed any of these events before. I always like to have a big group so that I know what to look for, especially the more subtle ones like the transit of Venus. I wasn't sure if I had the right equipment for that, so having a group with me was definitely very helpful. Unfortunately, I missed the transit of Mercury earlier this year because I was in Taiwan for a conference, and it happened during the nighttime in Taiwan. It was during the daytime here in Seattle. But I tried to look for the transit of Mercury back in 2016, and I wasn't able to see it with the equipment that I had. So that's why I wasn't too disappointed about missing it here, because if I stayed back and I couldn't see it with my equipment, that would be a loss for me. So I was in Taiwan at the time. So 2018, I went online to look for a club, and they met in West Seattle. We all went there. It was really cloudy, really disappointing. But there was a TV crew there, and I had a good time chatting with people, and that was that. Later that year, I started to really view things with earnest, because I had a few situations that put me into a little bit of a life crisis. I had an old friend of mine who had passed away. He had some drug problems. He had an injury, and he ended up using painkillers and had spiraled out of control, unfortunately. And then an ex-girlfriend of mine, not the one I broke up with years earlier, but another ex-girlfriend of mine was going through menopause. And I started to worry about my own demise, whether it be passing away or just getting a chronic condition, or maybe an accident or an injury or something that prevents me from doing things that I love to do, including the stargazing. So I really started to do it with earnest. And I went out to view the Jupiter in opposition and Saturn in opposition, and later that year Mars also went into opposition. I tried to view Uranus and Neptune in opposition. I didn't have any luck with that, not with the equipment that I have. I'm gonna have to look into getting some better equipment for. I haven't seen Mercury, at least not in transit across the sun, and I haven't seen Uranus and Neptune yet. I hope to eventually. I don't have the right equipment for that yet. But it's nice to point the camera where it would be and set it for a timer and just pretend that I could see it, even though I can't. I'll take a picture of the constellation that I know it's near, and I'll just call it that. What else did I see last year? 2019, I saw the lunar eclipse. January 2019. I was hoping to travel earlier, just last week actually, to go see the lunar eclipse. Let me see if I can get the map of where it was. Let's see. 2020 lunar eclipse. Oh, January. Okay. So inthesky.org is one of my favorite. So it was only a penumbral lunar eclipse. Not the best thing I've ever seen, but I was lonely. Of it. It's a very slow time for where I'm working, and it's kind of a slow time in terms of connections with my peers, and I was lonely. And oh well, I didn't get to go anyhow. Well, I was hoping one of these cities in Alaska would host the eclipse. But the problem is when I looked up how to view it from Anchorage or Nome, I could just take a quick flight there, go outside the airport, maybe shoot for a couple hours, come back into the airport, and fly home. I was hoping to do something like that. But when I looked at how you would view it from Anchorage, it was like 3 degrees over the horizon, and I wasn't sure. I didn't want to fly all the way out there and then not see anything. So I was a little surprised by that, though. So in Alaska, most of the year, you can't see either the sun or the moon. It's always very low in the horizon. And then I thought about, I had just gone to see my family in Taiwan not long ago, so I didn't want to go there, especially if it's only going to be a couple days. I was thinking about going to Gdansk, Poland, because I know a very good viewing spot over there. I've viewed the night sky there a few times before. Well, not the night sky, because the 2 times I went to Gdansk, I went right near the peak of summer, so I hardly ever saw the night in Gdansk, which is kind of funny. So that's why I wanted to go last week, but it was quite a little bit more pricey than I had anticipated. I mean, I would have been willing to spend in total, maybe if it were $700-800, sure. I mean, I spent a lot more than that dealing with depression, and I know that would have helped because I was very lonely, and it's a slow time at my job. It's a slow time with my my social commitments, and unfortunately, it was more like $4,000 or $5,000 when you put it all together. So that's a little bit more than I could spend. At that point, I'm probably better off of finding other ways to deal with the problems. But the good news is that later this year, I really look forward to this one, 4th of July. So good news is that on the 4th of July. We also have another penumbral lunar eclipse, and in Seattle. What time is that going to happen in Seattle? Between 8 and 10:52. I hope to catch a photograph of the moon with fireworks. I mean, that would be really exciting for me, even if I don't get the fireworks. I mean, I don't like fireworks normally, but I've never seen a space event in the background of fireworks. So that will be exciting to me. Unfortunately, it's only a penumbral eclipse. It'd be really nice to have, just out of curiosity, earlier today I actually looked up when we have at least a partial or full lunar eclipse. Unfortunately, on the 4th of July, unfortunately, it doesn't happen until the year 22 something. I can't remember the year, but it's going to be a while. Oh well. And then on November 29 to 30, which is really nice because this is around Thanksgiving. There's not going to be a whole lot of people at my favorite viewing station. I have a favorite rest stop in Ellensburg. I have a funny name I give places that are very good for stargazing. So there's the rest stop in Ellensburg. When I go to Taiwan to visit my family, my family lives in Taipei. I sometimes take the train to Keelung, and there's a very nice hill where you could view the stars going over the water. And then obviously, I just mentioned Gdansk Bay in Poland. So these good places to stargaze here on Earth, I call them space stations on Earth. You know, I tell people I'm going to Ellensburg Space Station, or sometimes here in the sea. If I don't have a whole lot of time to travel, if I go out to Kirkland, where Lake Washington is, I'm not sure if my viewers are going to recognize this place. There's the boat marina, and so over there, you're looking to the west. So it's a good place to see things that are setting. So, for example, so Jupiter comes in opposition around. This year it's going to be around the beginning of July. So after opposition, Jupiter will start to set earlier and earlier. So around August, September, October, that's really a good place to view Jupiter setting. And intuitively, I just think of it as a space station here on Earth. I look forward to someday when I go up in space and I take my camera there and I start zooming in on all the places on Earth that I treasure, especially Gdansk Bay, and especially some of the places where I've done very special events, like in Rochester, where I went on my first date ever, or in Boston, where for the first time in my life, a girl asked me out on a date. And all the special places on Earth where special events happen to me, I hope to take my camera up into space and zoom in on them. But the thing is that it's not even about the stargazing anymore. It's about all these memories that I have. It's kind of funny. Sometimes when I go through old photographs, or I see something in the sky that last time I saw there was a certain memory associated with it. I especially love when the moon comes into conjunction with Venus. That was one of the first conjunctions I ever saw. I happened to see it by accident one time. I was looking at this. This was before I really studied how all the planets move. But I saw Venus and the moon getting closer and closer every night. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to overlap tomorrow. And finally they did, and I got a few good photographs, and I realized it happened. I went up online to look up when it would happen next. I didn't even know it was called a conjunction until I went to inthesky.org. But what was really disappointing was that when I looked, all of the conjunctions, they never happened during the full moon, and it took me, I couldn't understand why. It actually took me a few seconds to realize, oh yeah, when you look at the full moon, you're looking away from the orbit of Venus. You know, it was just a brain fart that I didn't realize why you can only get a crescent moon with Venus. But a lot of these events now bring me a fuzzy memory because of how I did them. I don't know how I'll react when I start seeing things that I treasure here on Earth from space, especially Gdansk. Oh, I don't know why. I've always told people I want my ashes to go into the Gdansk Bay after I die. I guess once I upload this video, it will now be more permanent because I've only told my close family members. But my dream, especially, is if I get warning about dying. If my doctor tells me I have a month to live, then I can fly out to Gdansk and I can just jump into the Gdansk Bay and then swim all the way to heaven. Or better yet, I can let my ashes burn up in the atmosphere above Gdansk. You know, jump out from a rocket and just have my body burn up and the ashes fall into the Gdansk Bay. I really look forward to that. I don't know why, but as a first step, I probably want to see Gdansk from above. I've seen it above from 6 miles above, not from 62 yet. I hope to do that someday. Thanks for watching.